Hello, or as he would say it.
Hey.
And let's be honest, if I was the recipient of that,
Hi.
I would have died on the spot. Because Nick Nelson is charming. Charming and beautiful, and starry-eyed and cute and friendly and safe and innocent, and above all, mine alone. He's so charming that I and myriads of other fans find it impossible to resist him. Nick Nelson, played by young British actor Kit Connor, is the romantic lead of 2022 Netflix teen show Heartstopper. He's also a very recent example of a line of endlessly beautiful young men that have women, and occasionally us gays too, lose our minds in desire. We call them heartthrobs. Still, Nick Nelson isn't just any heartthrob. He's a perfect example of what a heartthrob looks like in our current time. In many ways, he's engineered to make us fall in love with him, with Heartstopper, and through that, with Netflix. Showrunners know how much we love swooning over a heartthrob, how it glues us to the screens. In this video essay, I will analyze why exactly we cherish Nick so much, how he becomes a contemporary heartthrob, and why that can be a very damaging role to play. Chapter 1. Looks, or... Heartstopper doesn't have glistening bodies grinding on top of each other like genre colleagues such as Elite or Euphoria. Instead, nudity is few and far between. Of course, considering that Heartstopper wants to be a children-friendly show. Kit Connor was a minor when season 1 was shot. This is a good time for a disclaimer. Heartstopper displays the romantic activities of minors. Whether it's okay for Netflix to do that, to make shows that sexualize teenagers, is a whole different debate that doesn't fit in this video. Please imagine all the following obsessing over Nick as if it were coming from a teenager, because that's what we, the viewers, slip into as we watch Heartstopper and start identifying with young Charlie Spring. Anyway, Nick Nelson is gorgeous, and Heartstopper makes sure we know it. Take his puppy eyes as an example. They have the supernatural power to make a dreamy soundtrack start playing, and let cartoon leaves fly through a classroom. Then, just a few minutes later into the first episode, Nick looks into the camera and confesses his love in a dreamlike sequence.
Charlie, I wanted to tell you that I'm gay too, and I'm in love with you. Do you want to go out with me? I want to be with you forever.
Us viewers do not care that protagonist Charlie only imagines this. The entire show is just an imaginary story, and someone with Nick's charm telling us these things? Let's just say it would take a literal village to stop teenage me from having the most insane biblical crush on Nick. There's more examples of how Heartstopper pushes the Nick Nelson heartthrob agenda. With British school uniforms, it's a bit hard to get the image across through outfits in season 1. Still, Nick gets special treatment. He's allowed to occasionally wear just his shirt stretched thinly over his broad shoulders, which Kit Connor has explained in a Guardian interview was a size too small to make him look big. He gets the only shirtless moment of the season when we see him in a changing room. It's not a sexual scene at all, but let's be honest here. This is heartthrob territory and fan service. We also see him frequently play rugby in the kind of shorts that send ripples through the internet every time Paul Mescal wears them out and about. Season 2 loses the school uniforms, but continues in the same vein. While most other male characters wear loose, oversized clothing, Nick strolls through Paris in grey sweatpants and tight shirts with short sleeves. Just like in season 1, Nick is shirtless in one scene, and again, it's not sexual at all. Not sexual, but completely irrelevant for the plot, which is why I'd say we have some more fan service nudity on our hands. There will be a shirtless scene in season 3. We've already seen some footage of it, and let's just say this. TikTok, Twitter, and weirdly Yahoo News had a field day with it. As we see, it would be a stretch to say that Nick Nelson isn't sexualized in Heartstopper. Still, he's portrayed in a way that lets him retain his innocence. After 2 seasons, we still haven't seen Nick and Charlie have sex, and even the snogging we got was almost too much for Nick. This is key to understanding why we love him so much. He's cute enough for us to fall in love with him, but he keeps his youthful innocence that other characters often have to sacrifice to satiate the hungry eyes of viewers living in a sex-crazed world. He's a heartthrob because he doesn't know how special he is, and because he doesn't really try to be one. He's just the boy next door, or sitting next to you in maths class. If that boy looked like a literal model who has had entire photo spreads dedicated to his beauty in Vogue magazine. And just as a last footnote for this chapter, for that shoot, Vogue put Kit Connor in a Breton shirt, reminiscent of an iconic picture of James Dean. Yes, the James Dean who wrote the blueprint on how to be a heartthrob in the 1950s, when his performance in Rebel Without a Cause single-handedly created teenage angst. He played a young man coming of age who was so charming, so effortlessly cool, no one could look away. Those are some big heartthrob shoes to fill, but Kit Connor as Nick Nelson is up for the challenge. Chapter 2, Social Capital, or
It's all about popular.
think of your time in school. Now think of that kid, that boy whose life seemed to be just perfect. He was popular, with boys as bros and girls as admirers, athletic, usually the leader of a sports team, never showed a shadow of self-doubt, and of course, he was good looking too. Maybe he was in the year above you. Did someone come to mind? In Heartstopper, this is Nick Nelson. Or at least, that's the Nick Nelson that's introduced to Charlie and us as
one of the rugby boys.
Honestly, this is where Heartstopper leaves the teen genre and enters a straight-up fantasy world. We are supposed to believe that the Nick we see has been friends with Awful Harry for years and only now sees him as the dickhead he is? That he was blissfully unaware of the severe bullying Charlie is traumatized by, but once he learns of it becomes the perfect knight in shining armor? Whatever. I don't really care for the completely different person Nick must have been before the cameras were rolling in Truham Grammar School. I like this Nick a lot, so I'll just stick with him. In any case, Nick has the social capital of the perfect white heterosexual handsome jock that everyone adores. We imagine his life to be incredibly easy. It would be easy for us to hate him for that too. However, Heartstopper is smart in directing all of our dislike towards Ben. Ben is another beautiful boy with a lot of social capital, but sadly Ben's a bit evil.
See you later then, yeah? Still don't tell anyone about this.
We get to know Ben and the shitty way he treats Charlie before Nick is ever shown on screen. Therefore, we already have a villain by the time we meet our boy with the golden retriever energy, Nick Nelson. Ben is the devil we need so that Nick can be the angel we want. For a lot of us queer folk, a picture-perfect schoolboy like Nick who turns out to be queer is quite healing to see. Many of us were like Charlie, more on the outside, often bullied for our queerness, even if we tried to hide it. I'd argue that seeing a character like Nick be firmly bisexual might again be entering fantasy territory, because toxic masculinity is very much key to becoming the king of the high school jocks. It's a delightful fantasy to watch anyway. And again, the fact that Nick doesn't even want most of his social capital makes him even more desirable. That he chooses a queer, alternative, progressive, nerdy group of friends over anyone else makes us happy, because it shows us a world less divided, where you can be a high school jock and a raging bisexual at the same time, where nobody's restricted by something they never chose in the first place. It also makes us feel wanted by a type of person who in our own life ignored us at best or bullied us at worst. And if someone of Nick's caliber wants us, then we are sure as hell going to want him back. Chapter 3, Husband Material, or Not only does Nick choose Charlie and his nerdy queer sidekicks as his new friends for life, he goes through quite the metamorphosis. From Nick, the hot rugby bro, to Nick, the emotional support dog for Charlie, the struggling gay teenage boy. Charlie's the stand-in protagonist that we're very much supposed to identify with. Whether we're gay or struggling with our mental health is not actually that important. We all have demons inside us that torment us, have reasons we feel we're different and our life is hard. We all want to feel loved. Therefore, identifying with Charlie is a gift bestowed to anyone who wants it. And I personally really wanted it because it comes as a package deal, with Golden Boy Nick being obsessed with Charlie and, well, obsessed with me. This is where Heartstopper presents another door to a Narnia-esque fantasy world that we happily walk through. For some reason, at a meager 16 years old, Nick is the perfect boyfriend that never disappoints. He initiates and plans dates with Charlie as if he's never heard of the fear of being rejected. Whenever Charlie needs him, he's there. He reassures him, he compliments him, he makes an effort with Charlie's friends, and he apologizes for going on a date with Imogen, even though he only did it because
I was so surprised, and all our mates were watching and expecting me to say yes, and I was such an idiot. I just blurted out yes because I didn't know how to say no without embarrassing her and confusing all our mates. And then her dog died, and I felt really bad for her.
He smiles a lot, he laughs at every single joke Charlie tells, and he brings a dog into the relationship. He communicates his worries, and when Charlie doesn't, makes sure they sort out the issues between them. Really, the amount of green flags Nick Nelson waves is staggering. It's beautiful to see just how non-toxic his and Charlie's relationship is from the start. I don't know what kind of relationship guidebooks Nick read or what great values Olivia Colman instilled in him, but he's very much a natural at being the perfect boyfriend. He might struggle with his shitty dad, but it doesn't have any long-lasting effects on him. Nick gets angry at his brother and his father, but he seems to be completely immune to any kind of trauma to work through that characters who lack a respectable father figure normally face. I argue that this is because his primary purpose in Heartstopper is to love Charlie in a way that we find endearing. A beautiful bisexual rugby jock who is also literal husband material? Sign me up because I want one. Chapter 4. Vulnerability, or...
Bye, actually.
Nick's difficulties might not visibly impact him much, but they are still very relevant. If not for him, then for us. As I said before, Nick is very close to heteronormative perfection. Viewers really don't like a perfect character because it's unrealistic, boring, and really hard to relate to, because we all know that none of us are perfect. That's why it's a vital ingredient in the heartthrob recipe to be some sort of delinquent, to go against the status quo.
He's such a dick!
For James Dean, it was knife fights and almost driving off a cliff. Troy Bolton, who's like the straight American big brother of Nick Nelson, rebelled by singing and dancing in musicals. Edward Cullen rebelled by being really old, obsessed with Bella's blood and occasionally hunting deer, but like in a blood-hungry vampire way. Chuck Bass did it by generally behaving like a complete ass. Is Chuck Bass even a heartthrob, or is that just me? Doesn't matter. Luckily, Nick reveals his bisexuality just in time to shatter the heteronormative dream. He starts rebelling against Harry, the stand-in for straight jocks, and the culture of bullying that surrounds them. Still, he struggles with coming out, and that's enough for us viewers to consider him human again. He struggles with coming out in a spectacularly mature fashion, as he's very much aware of how much time he needs and how to expertly communicate that to Charlie. Still, we see him struggling with the heteronormative system. There's a reason why the coming out between Nick and his mom is one of the most beloved scenes of the entire show. It's because we see the human side to Nick that's sometimes lost because he spends so much time being the perfect boyfriend. It's also just unbelievably cute to see Kit Connor and Olivia Colman be so lovely to each other. The male side of his family is another part of Heartstopper where Nick can show what a capable rebel he is. He confronts his brother and his father with their BS, and it's really quite satisfying to watch, because he's very right.
I don't care what you think about it anymore. Because you don't care to even see us more than 2 times a year.
His father is emotionally and physically unavailable and unreliable. When Nick points that out, we love him even more, because he shows how unafraid he is to go against the status quo. Nick might not drive fast cars and wear leather jackets, but still, he's very much a reincarnation of James Dean's Jim Stark, who already yelled at his parents 70 years ago.
You're tearing me apart!
It's what heartthrobs do. Chapter 5. The Nick Kit Conundrum, or... What do we know by now? Nick Nelson is a lovely little heartthrob, and we adore him for it. The looks, the swagger, and the rebelliousness are all there, and on top of that, he's a picture-perfect boyfriend with no red flags. We love watching Heartstopper, and actor Kit Connor seems to love playing in it. Sounds like sunshine and rainbows, right? Sadly, there's some dark clouds on the horizon. Nick himself has said that he dislikes the term heartthrob. Why? Because fans online and offline are obsessed in really scary, damaging ways. Heartstopper presents a fantasy that's at times hard to believe, and the Nick Nelson we've met in real life have mostly been straight. Then, people started to suspect that Kit Connor was also straight in real life. When he was seen holding hands with a woman, fans turned on him and started hounding him with queerbaiting accusations. The story ended tragically, with Kit feeling forced to come out as bisexual himself, losing a very important bit of his privacy forever. This is the dark side of heartthrob culture, and not a new phenomenon at all. Beatlemania had women completely lose their sense of self in their obsession with 4 British men in the 1960s. It's the price that movies, TV shows, bands, and singers pay for engineering characters for us to fall in love with. We end up loving them too much. It's happened to One Direction and BTS, to Justin Bieber and Robbie Williams, to Leonardo DiCaprio and Ryan Gosling. Some have been able to handle it better, and some not so much. And now it's happening to Kit Connor. The heartthrob history repeats itself. There's nothing that can really be done about it, except for saying this, even though it probably won't stop fans from becoming fanatics. Stop obsessing over people you have never met. If you want to obsess over them, channel that into spending money to go see their movies and TV shows. Start a fan page to celebrate your love for them. Write letters to Netflix executives expressing how much you cherish the show. That's how you tell your precious heartthrobs they are doing a good job. How you make sure they stay hired. And finally, how all of us get more Heartstopper seasons and more Nick Nelson to make us happy.